traffic and
Yeah.
Are these people you saw and then, you figured it out? And of course, some of it, like the migrants, all that you were observing and from the college. And I know you were in Manipal and began that. So I loved your books on philosophy of science. And I'm trying to get my head around what it is that you got into, but I enjoyed most of it. And really, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that lady's tale.
No, and also the denouement of the detective story was very good. It surprised me.
Yeah.
So you did well there also.
So the lady's tale was actually quite, again, it's very anthropological in the sense. Just like every third store is a grocery store, the every third store is a tailor shop. And what is very interesting to me as, just as an outsider looking at it, is why are there so many young women who are ladies tailors? So, ladies tailors.
So many young
young men who are not ladies tailors, okay? And so Raghavendra is such a... Yeah, sorry. No, so I literally on this guy, because I'd seen many of them there as ladies tailors, so they'd be measuring blouse and stitching it and all that. And they seem to take great pride in it. So Raghavendra, like many men, had no clue that his wife was giving her blouse to stitch to this. So he gets caught in the rain, he enters this tailor shop, very nice, what's happens there, and then sees him cutting for his wife's blouse. He's opening her old blouse and cutting it, and this guy suddenly gets very possessed. He says, what is this guy, this young fellow Malayali that too, sitting and measuring my wife's blouse and stitching it and caressing it. So he's
when you pointed it out, that was the first time. I was like, oh, I don't know what it must feel like to watch that.
Exactly. So it's but then I thought, it was set in the 90s, right? So I was like saying, the late 90s, and just after the book came out, I got a little bit worried, first whether water is really a problem now in some parts of Bangalore. Now I realize it's everywhere. Even in JP Nagar, there's people waiting outside for it. And then this thing about ladies tailor, are they really still doing it? So I was going in Indiranagar 4th block, and promptly, of course, in Indiranagar the ladies tailor. Yes. And there is two young men sitting in So I felt so relieved that they're still but I'm saying these are very interesting cultural tidbits. So these are part of what makes smaller narratives of culture. Not the grand narratives which some governments and parties do.
It just exposes the idiocy or the futility of trying to write a derivative detective novel set in India. Just because it's set in India, it doesn't mean those things can be imported. Any other questions? Yes, sure. Thank you.
Okay, I started off with following a prayer, was checking out books in Champaka, and I came across this. I'm like, I cannot stop reading it, and I think it took me out of 1 year reading slump. So thank you so much for writing that. I have yet to read this, but today you also mentioned that the language is the authority, and even in following the prayer, you say language alive, is Kannada alive. So I just want to understand, when did you start seeing this language aspect with this is such a, we don't think is language alive, is language authority. So how did you start thinking in that aspect?
Actually, I can speak without it, so you can share. No, I think the point was, there is a kind of a larger academic history in my own work. My first, you can't hear me, so my first view was actually on translating the word science and language. It was about trying to understand the sort of translation in the language. So there has always been this larger point about the nature of language, very simple point, it's very deeply philosophical. It's just, I use language to describe reality. Does language have the capacity to describe reality? That's all. So it's such a simple question. So even you say, this is the reality of the room that I'm seeing, let's say there are 50 people here, I say that there are 50 people in front of me. That seems like a correct description of it's true. But actually, even that statement, there are 50 people in front of me, is actually not true. Not because there are no 50 people. Not because there are no 50 count. But because there's nothing called people in front of me. There is you, there is you, there is you, there is you. There are individuals, objects, entities. The word people is an abstract concept. That concept is not in front of me. I add it to my description. No language can transparently capture reality. And this is a fundamental philosophical problem. When modern science, or rather science begins, science wants to describe the world as it is. That is the task of science. That's why science always says scientists only discover what is already written in their nature. They never add. That's why they never mention a scientist as writing a story. And you tell a scientist, oh, your theories are like stories, nothing irritates them more than this. Because for them, stories are fiction, making up something. For them, scientists are like journalists. So in fact, journalism is deeply influenced by the idea of writing in science, which is what influences. So the journalists will never put themselves in the report. No journalist will write.
Used to be there, and now
everybody is doing okay. So otherwise if you're supposed to have an objective distance, means you will never mention yourself.
Yeah.
So the question was, so science rejects our ordinary language, like let's say Kannada and English, as a language of science. So it moves to mathematics as a true language, because it thinks our language cannot do the job. So this is the argument of the Kannada writers also. Can English do the job of correctly representing this world? It's a fair question. But I'm saying it's wrongly posed in the context of fiction. That's a different argument. So this question in Following a Prayer is actually much simpler. For the kid, why this happens, she basically gets lost in the forest for 3 nights in the rainy Malnad. You can imagine what happens to this kid, who is very brave. And she's sitting there, she is shouting out to the gods her grandmother has taught her, some Ganesha. Nothing comes to her help. She has to confront the darkness and the forest by herself for 3 nights. Then that's why she stops speaking. Because she says, all your gods are lies. It's not just Kannada is a lie. What she's saying is, your language is a lie because if you don't have language, you don't have gods to talk about. We name gods. Suppose you don't have birds. How will we talk about gods? How do animals talk about God which don't have, let's say, language? So she's only saying, we have produced all this language as a lie. And they're all lying. There's nothing out there what it says. But I was saying, larger question is, this is the puzzle. Language can capture the truth. It is true that there are people in front of me, whatever it says. But the same language can also capture great lies. Nothing stops me from saying there are 50 elephants in the room. And I can write a story about it. Language seems to be indifferent to it, but the very act of using language can never capture truth purely, without mediation. That's a very interesting question about the idea of language. So then, how can all these artists who are saying storytellers were truly capturing the nature of Indian society, Indian caste structure? I think that's a big, big problem even thinking about it. Because how do we think about language? That's the question.
I want to ask out of curiosity that, there's such an affection when you speak about all your characters, the protagonists of the book. In your books, have you written about characters that you dislike?
Yeah. No, in Water Days, I think the police chap, I don't like it too much. Nasty fellow. I think.
But I felt bad for Nagaraj also somewhat.
Yeah.
I mean, not bad, but I understood his position.
No, it's actually a big problem in India writing about various communities.
Yeah.
Because one person who is a Malayali, she was very offended that the guy who was a carpenter was a Malayali. What can I do? He is the father of that girl. Okay? He's like all other fathers, many other fathers. Very big, he doesn't understand his girl children. But it so happened he's a Malayali. She was like, why? What is the problem with Malayalis? No, so what do? So now this is the big problem because as she said, the way you said it, I said, oh my God, what the Kannadigas are going to say. She said, the Kannadigas are the real crooks in this novel. Oh my God. Because it's very interesting. Because the other day, one person was from Jharkhand. She said, I really love the book. But you know that scene where all the Bihari students are looking at the girl, the one you talked about, looking at the neighboring house and peeping through the window. I felt so bad because it's actually a description of all hostel boys.
Yes, exactly.
That comes through. Dirty bloody creatures, you know. They throw everything. I mean, the worst part of it, they open mixture and throw it every 3 days and be like, that's all Raghavendra sees. Okay? It so happens they're from Bihar, and it's needed for the story so that he can go there and he's a neighboring house to the girl, right? Then she's saying, that's what I felt bad. Bihari students are behaving like no. I said, no, this is the problem about language and truth. I am trying to tell a story, and everybody is reading it as if I'm writing social commentary of these creatures. And that is also the greatness of language. You know, when I've done the Tamil book which you said couldn't read, it's called Iranda Tandaya, Two Fathers. It's a collection of my plays translated into Tamil. And one of them was on Einstein. It was a big celebration of Einstein's 100th year. You know, this celebrated the 1905 famous paper on relativity. So the Association of Physics celebrates the 100th in 2005. So IIC, I was at NIAS, then IIC was giving talks on Einstein and all that. And I said, well, I want to write a play on Einstein. And there's a very wonderful story, very less known. And you know, I think a lot of my engagement or point about women also have been influenced by various kinds of influence in my own family, surrounded by very strong women. The gender studies group in NIAS, for example, a lot of very good people are around. So there is a story that Einstein had a daughter whom he never acknowledged. And Einstein's relationship with students is very, very complex. And one of them is schizophrenic, becomes, this is a daughter. So I wrote this novel, a play on, called Not an Ordinary Man, about this daughter. And you know, the fact that he doesn't acknowledge, etc. So we did this play, and one of my colleagues was the ex-director of KFR, was there. He comes and tells me after the play, he said, you know, you have destroyed my last hero. And I said, I was trying to, and the whole play was done in a very non-realistic manner. It was almost like reading a text, trying to make them think I'm not reading proper Einstein. But that is the problem of language, how we get drawn in as if fiction is true. And so I'm not talking about Kannadigas or Malayalis. It so happens that Malayalis were like that in Mathikere. At that time. That is a story of people who are there like that. That's what it happened. But it's not about Malayalis or Tamilians or Kannadigas or Biharis. No? But it's difficult. It's just a larger problem. So I think
Who did you dislike?
Oh, yeah. So, that police guy was
Simply because of the absolute brutality.
And the fact that the police, the lack of morality they have to be the police. I think that was.
What is the future of, say, languages now that we live in the artificial intelligence age? And who's responsible for the death of a language, if I could get this from you?
Yeah. No, okay, so, I think, definitely there's been a major change in the way children engage in the question of language. Capacities to read and write have changed a lot. I'm not going to say it's become bad, etc. It has changed. The younger people are now looking at the nature and the function of language very differently. So definitely getting people to read poetry, for example, is more difficult. Getting them to write something, even in one page, essay or something, is becoming very difficult. Okay, but then language is the most important, essential soul of being human. And that's something very special to us. The fact that, it's not just that we are expressing something, we use language very, very different. So I want, if you extend the meaning of language, for example, music, singing is language. Today, a lot of our language has become visual media. They're all languages. What is the definition of language? Language is actually a system of signs which stands for something else. So the beauty of, I think the most interesting part about language is that it can talk about things which you do not see. That's the most important function of language. The moment I use the word tree or that mango tree, we are not seeing that tree, but you're bringing that before me. So language has, so we may not be using what we call as verbal spoken language that much, that will change a lot. Definitely grammatical, holding on to certain kinds of grammatical structures are all going to change. Some of this is already being there, some of the most very creative writing of, let's say in UK, for example, the West Indian, in Canadian writing in English, or different kinds of, even Anthony Burgess already was very different, then Cockney, working class English, etc. See, this is the problem with Indian English writing. We want to write convent English. Whereas when they write a really broken, ungrammatical, unreadable sometimes, very difficult to read English, they are called as very creative writing English. And when we write like that, they'll say, oh, you're making mistakes.
Yeah.
You don't know English. So I'm saying that experiment with the language has always been happening, but definitely for the new generation, we are so much influenced by visual media. I think that is going to be their major language. That expression through visual media, whichever forms, whether it's Instagram or producing films or whatever it is. But it's going to be a major problem because we cannot sustain this. What we don't realize is that digital media needs enormous amount of energy to sustain.
Yeah.
And we don't even see what you need to sustain. And when that breaks down,
Water again.
yeah, it's exactly the same thing. It's just going to happen very soon, and then we'll realize that maybe we have to go back to certain other exhibitions of language.